About 80% of what I learned about fundraising is in the book by Ryan Breslow called Fundraising. But the 20%, which I think is a nuance, is what I'll share here now. The first thing about fundraising that I think all founders need to know is that you are trying to prove something. You're either at an inflection point in the business where the money will accelerate that progress or that growth or that revenue, or you need the money to prove something where investors take on a little more risk and therefore you give them a little lower valuation, which is fine. Because I'm telling you, no pre-prod company is worth $20 million or $18 million at the gate, pre and post. Step one is get the book Ryan Breslow called Fundraising. That's for the tactical stuff. Step two is you learn how to tell a story. Learning how to tell a story is the most critical part of your conversation, because a bad pitch meeting with a VC is you presenting slides. Here's a whole communication flaw I'll give to you. You want to talk to a VC because they've invested in your category and you think they know something about the category that you don't, or the connection that you don't. Boom, that's helpful. It's a good match. It's a fintech VC. You're creating a fintech app. So you go to the VC, you have a blurb about what your thing is in a sentence or two, no longer. And then you say, here are 3 bullet points to get you started. These bullet points should have numbers, whether it be on your market that you're creating in, that reflects a core insight that you have, specialized knowledge, core insight, or if you've already started on the product, metrics that prove your point in the market. 3 bullet points. Boom. Where people mess up is they send a deck. And this is like poker, where the more information they have from you, it gives them the upper hand. Because ideally, or usually, they've diligenced your market, know the players, know what product offerings there are, know the growth of the market, etc. So the more that they have about you is more than they can use in a decision against you or not giving you money. I will die on this hill. If they ask for a deck, send them a 2-slide deck with what the product is and who you are. And if you can help it, just don't give them everything. I've seen an intro request where it's a paragraph on what it is, a paragraph on why it's important, the full deck, they sent financials. You don't want to do that. Give them intrigue. And then the meeting should essentially be you pitching, knowing all your numbers off the top of your head, knowing the entire story. The story gives you the effect of making me care. Why do I care? Why do I care is built on the world, which is like the market, the character, you, your startup, your product, your team, why you specifically, or why your team specifically is tasked with attacking this opportunity. And then what you're building speaks to those things. And then bonus, if you can figure out what about the investor's background or what about the investor's network has a specific hiring or BD implication to help those 3 things. That's where I think the through line makes the most sense. A bad story, and I've done this before, is where you go, how to pitch a startup or how to write a pitch deck. I think the first couple of results are always the Sequoia deck. And what you do is you take that deck, you go to Canva, you make 10, 12 slides, you go problem, solution, opportunity, market size, why now? I think I've got this memorized. Team. And it's a presentation of facts. And in the book, Pitch Anything, which is one of my favorite books, he talks about how when we receive information, our first and foremost priority is like the context and is this going to kill us or do I want to have sex with this thing? The 2 latter facts are less important for this talk. But the first thing is building the context in which everything else falls under. So you have to make the person, I think, care about the world first or care about the market before you go into the rest of it. The big brain thing to do, the Jedi thing to do, in my opinion, is you take all the things, that presentation of facts, it's Sequoia wants, whatever, and you embed it into a story that only you can tell, whether it be your personal background, in your childhood, or your career. Let's say you worked in D2C and you worked at some skincare brand, and everything you learned in that skincare brand, you're going to apply to your brand, which is also a skincare brand or a market you discovered ancillary to skincare. That's where I think the best pitches come from. And not, hey, investor, here's a problem. Here's a solution. Here's data that backs it up. Give us money. So again, the best stories are narrative driven. The best stories touch on those facts, but the facts are not the headline. The facts are the footer. The facts are embedded into that story. And the thing I learned from Andy Stanton, that's his name. He's, I think, one of the best storytellers of all time. And of course, if you're from tech and you're watching this, you may have not heard of him, but he is one of the main guys at Pixar. Pixar is in the business of pure storytelling. It's just media. And something he says is, you want to give people 2 + 2. Do not give them 4. 2 + 2. So after you tell your story about the market and the product and why your team is fit to do this, I think what you want to say is, because of X, Y, and Z, this thing is going to happen. Instead, you should talk about this thing happening as an inevitability. And when the through line makes sense, we will put together 2 and 2. Actually, I think it's funny that fits with this. We will put together 2 and 2, and we'll say that equals 4. And I want to invest in 4. Does that make sense? So at some point, you have to have a good story, have something to prove, and then talk about the outcome as an inevitability that has like a huge, like outsized return, which is great. This thing has like a 90% chance of failing, but like a 10% chance of changing the world. Hat tip, Khosla. I think here's what not to do. Do not send all of your information on the intro. Maybe not even the second call. Do not just present facts. I've seen pitches where they open up with 89% of people do so-and-so. That VC is not going to go to her husband and go, baby, did you know that 89% of people do so-and-so? So talk about the meaning. Like this founder whose parents went through this struggle and now who has to live with this struggle is building a company around this. And actually 89% of people go through this as well. See what I'm saying? See the nuance there? I'd also say do not let them drag you on. Something I didn't know as a founder is that the bad VCs will keep egging you on. Angels egging you on just to get more information. It's like poker again. They're seeing you scratch your nose. They're seeing you every time you get high pair. And there's an art to this because a great founder friend of mine who's the founder of an amazing company called Club Feast, he talks about when raising money that you should never put yourself in a position to get a no. And that's a Jedi mind trick because when he pitches investors, he goes, I'm thinking about raising in X amount of months. I'd like to meet with you to get feedback on the market because I know you're in the space and you diligenced it on this story. He'll just tell a story. And at some point, the investor will come back like, hey, how's it going? Are you ready to raise it? Or they'll just straight up give him money. And the reason he does that is because he's going to say, hey, we are raising. Hello. No, thank you. You just put yourself in a position to get a no. As opposed to, we're thinking about raising, we're preparing our stuff, the business is looking good. Here's the information, here's the story. And obviously this is communicated in the meeting. Thanks for your time. And this is really helpful. You've been so helpful because investors like to be helpful. We'll catch up when we're ready. Then he's thinking. Because he's going to bring this meeting up in his partner meeting because he has to. And in the best cases, they say, look, he's thinking about raising soon. We'll just preempt him. We'll just give him money now. It's like giving yourself an above zero chance of getting a yes, as opposed to a 50% chance of getting a no, or yes, or no. See what I'm saying? That was something that I thought was pretty groundbreaking. It's just being able to tell the story and doing it within the confines of fundraising, that book, Ryan Breslow, and telling the story in the way you're supposed to tell the story. Hopefully that was helpful. I would say do run a process. If you already started, if you had investor meetings, you're like, give me money, following up here, just catching up here, circling back. You've been doing that for over 4 months and you haven't amassed a lot of money, then there's something wrong or it's just not that interesting. And if you already started, great, just stop. Make more progress in business. If you do it for 2 to 4 months and make progress, that speaks to what you're trying to prove, like I mentioned, I think you'll find better results. But if you've already started, it's a little harder because investors talk and they can tell something's cooling off, or if it's just not that interesting. So there has to be new information at every point that builds the intrigue. For example, what we used to do is we used to say, our product is launching soon, we're raising in a couple of weeks. And that information told them nothing about what we were trying to prove. And then those interactions fizzled out. And you see these interactions on AngelList and in the real world, where if you speak the language of investors, like great story, great leadership, the product is or could be great, and there's a ton of numbers that back this up that you didn't lead with, then they can decide in like a day. I've even seen it like on the spot. I've even gotten offered checks at a party in Miami on the spot, just because I was telling the story and how I best tell it. And so when you see that is true, and that can be true, it shows you that if I've been raising for 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, that we're not doing great. Good versus great, good versus great. Because investors see a deal, and for example, on one of these SPVs I was in on AngelList, I think it closed, I think they raised like $500K in an hour. Like if you tell the right story, you're the right person for the job, and communicate the right metrics, fast. So what I'm trying to save you from is just heartache of like raising for many months on end, because I've done that. Or it's like you go, and this is so painful, where you go, oh, I met this investor, and it's like April 1st. And the meeting is like April 10th. You spend the next like 10 days. You spend the next 10 days preparing for this meeting. 10th comes, he comes 10 minutes late, and he's like, all right, I have 20 more minutes. What you got for me? Da, da, da. And here's a problem, here's a solution, here's an opportunity. You've lost it. You've lost it. He didn't have the context needed to understand why your thing in this context is even at all important. And then April 11th comes around and you don't have more meetings. So what the God version of this thing looks like is have a great story. There's a through line between your story in the market, your story with your team, your story with the product, and you tell that story. Not raising, just telling the story passionately, like you fucking care, because I know you care. Otherwise, you wouldn't have dedicated years of your life to this. Tell it to the investors. 10, 20, 30, 40. Man, at some point, you asked to meet with all of them in 2, 3, 4 weeks. I try to stack it out 3 to 4 meetings a day because I'm pretty charismatic. So like doing that 8 times in a row diminishes like the last 4 or 5 meetings for me. So I try to keep it like 3 or 4 meetings a day. And then you're really pitching. You're really taking them into your world, and the intrigue happens. And you say, we're thinking about raising in a few weeks. Ooh. That tells them it's coming. But if we're early, we might be able to get a deal done. But let's just say you do that, no money comes. Okay, now what? Either your story isn't compelling enough. I go back to Mark Andreessen's recent advice on this. Just find more investors. It's just a funnel. It's okay. No, it sucks at the end of the funnel. But it's a lot of investors. And these days, because of COVID, the importance of good writing and a good story is much more important than the intro path it came from. But if you do have an intro path, great, use it. But usually these VCs and investors, it's just firstnameandcompany.com. Don't put too much thought into it. The last thing I'll say is I wish I kept the CRM of everyone I ever talked to about the business. Everyone. If you build that list of people you've had hand-to-hand combat with, and then in one click you say, I'd like feedback on this, then you don't have to cobble together a pipeline. And a good tool for this is Cabal, getkabal.com. Feed in the contacts, categorize them. Then you get to send messages to each group of people. It's great. I met the founder in COVID. Really nice guy. Didn't know he was at Craft Ventures, which I really respect. I think I found that out like a year later, but great tool. Okay, hopefully this is helpful. I can share more mistakes and learning in the future, but this is, I think, like the bulk of it. Let's summarize. 1, do not give them too much information. 2, have a great story and tell it from your fucking chest, okay? 3, if you're gonna do these closing type meetings, do them in a tight bound and conserve your energy. And then 4, if it doesn't work out, just find more investors. It's okay. It's okay. Look, with VCs, here's the truth. Come back every 6 months. And for the ones you really don't like and you don't really want to work with, tell them it's now or never and you don't want to fucking talk to them anyway. Come back every 6 months. It's different with creators though. If you want to partner with a creator, I know this is off topic, but they kind of need to see the full deal and the best version before they jump into bed with you. But investors, it's kind of their job. It's like kind of their job to meet with you every 6 months because they need all the deals they can get. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Bye.